Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 477 of the Orange Pill Investor. And no, you didn't get rickrolled. Um, I think that's a very appropriate song because I want to talk about Ponzi's. And no, I don't mean Bitcoin treasury companies, infinite money glitch, strategies, preferred ATM, uh, dilution accretion, uh, hocus pocus. What I mean is the federal government's Ponzi scheme of pretending that they need to tax people when they can just print infinite money with a press of the button. And I think most Bitcoiners understand that the Fed printing, lowering interest rates, all of that stuff is bullish because, you know, it just stimulates inflation, and that's good for assets, property, stock market, and then of course the big daddy of them all now we've got Bitcoin. But it's about to become a weird, not self-fulfilling prophecy. What is the thing where it builds upon itself? Um Regardless. So if if the Fed starts printing, and I think there was a suggestion that Chris Cole from Artemis, I got put onto him by Ryan and Jeff early on in their Quant Bros series, and this guy had come up with, he did like a hundreds of years study of the stock market and what kind of investments would thrive, or at least would do well during booms, busts, all that good stuff. And in an interview early on, I don't think he was quite a Bitcoiner at that point. I don't know if he ever did become one, but he was asked why did the governments not like strangle Bitcoin in its crib when they had a chance. And I thought this was the most brilliant explanation, especially coming from someone who wasn't even like an orange pilled, laser eyed Bitcoin maxi. And he said he thought they allowed Bitcoin to survive because it was like a pressure relief valve for inflation. Because normally their shitty economic policies result in an unhappy population because they either get rampant inflation or stagnant job reports. Um, the Fed thinks it can control these things, and then of course everything they do makes it worse. And so Bitcoin became actually almost kind of like their best friend, even if they didn't believe in it or even if they didn't understand it, because instead of um, properties values going through the roof and creating another housing bubble like what happened in 2007, now Bitcoin's price can just get artificially well, I shouldn't say artificially inflated, like properly inflated, because it's a accurate reflection of what the difference between what the deflation rate should be and what the inflation rate actually is. And so they were like, you know what, screw it. This asset that we don't care about, that's never going to get put into the CPI, right? The inflation numbers. They can cook the books to put whatever they want in there. If ribeye is too expensive, they can just take that out and put 70/30 ground beef. And so it doesn't matter if inflation is reflected in Bitcoin's price, because only a few cypherpunk and and uh, and the rest of us degens actually care about Bitcoin's price. And so Bitcoin served a purpose for a while, but now it's coming full circle, or the pendulum swing is swung back, and now they're not just the source of driving inflation and pumping Bitcoin's price, but supposedly these big countries are going to be stacking sats as well. And so the printing is actually going to pump their own bags, which is totally totally like totally like a crypto rug pull. So that just seems like the way that shitcoins operate, right? You you pre-mine, you distribute all the coins to your homies. Basically, was that the Cantillon effect? And everybody that stands closest to the money printer makes the most money, and then you rug pull everyone else. So who's getting rug pulled? Every US citizen that doesn't hold Bitcoin is getting just crushed, worse than they've ever been crushed. This is about to be the mamma jamma parasitic fiat wealth extraction bonanza of all time. And I hope people figure out Bitcoin freaking yesterday ASAP, because it's about to get real fucking ugly for anyone who doesn't own Bitcoin, because you're the sucker. You're the mark. You're the cow getting milked. And uh, everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve, but I can't help feeling some serious, serious sympathy for people who are just not going to figure it out soon enough. I mean, as soon as you get off zero, you stop getting poorer forever and you start getting richer forever. So it's, in that sense, it's kind of like everyone is in charge of throwing themselves a lifeline, and really just rescuing themselves and, and pulling themselves ashore. Like, you don't need a lifeguard. You can just throw yourself the damn life raft and escape. But man, are not that many people gonna do it. So it's gonna be kind of crazy. And there's just gonna be this weird, like, and I guess fiat can't get away with it forever, but to a certain extent, man, for however long that they can get away with it, where they can just counterfeit and print money and buy real money with it and just buy Bitcoin with it, it almost makes me feel bad for stacking sats, because so many people are going to get wrecked and just bled dry. But I also think that it's a good warning, because these people that are going to get wrecked are going to be real pissed off about it. And maybe the government comes up with some kind of UBI to placate people and stop them from rising up in the streets and uh, violently overthrowing the government or something. But in the meantime, they might be looking for someone local to blame. And so if you're, you know, if you're publicly a Bitcoiner at all, or if they can just see that you're the only one in the neighborhood that's not going broke, they'll probably just figure it out, right? You're not going to need to be tracked down on chain and found out that you have a bunch of Bitcoin, because if you're the only one who can still afford frickin' grass-fed beef at the grocery store, it's gonna be pretty obvious who has the sats and who doesn't. So get your shit together. Get ready to I don't know, cover your tracks. Stay as anonymous as possible. That's a little bit too late for dumbasses like me who thought it would be a good idea to put their face on camera. But secure yourself and your families, I guess is the way I'll put it. Prepping might not just be a crazy conspiracy theory kind of attitude. It might just be basic survival shit at this point. So I'm hoping we transition to hyper Bitcoinization in a peaceful manner, but it could get a lot worse before it gets better. And of course, my login expired. I was going to talk about whether MNAV is justified today, so maybe I'll do it another day. But I think the TLDR version is if a company has some kind of method for acquiring Bitcoin and the market is supposed to be forward looking, then some positive above one MNAV is justified if you have a path forward for stacking sats in some manner, right? If you want to have the same number of Bitcoin in the future as you have now, you either just buy Bitcoin or, you can buy a Bitcoin ETF or something if you want one-to-one exposure. But a Bitcoin treasury company should be able to give you the exposure of their balance sheet plus some kind of positive flow or some kind of path towards stacking sats, which would just, if they're going to have more Bitcoin in the future and the market is forward looking, then they deserve some kind of above one MNAV. I don't know if it's 1.1 or 2.1 or 20.1, but it's got to be something. Now, the reverse is also true. If they are not going to be a responsible custodian of that Bitcoin, maybe they're going to um, uh, put that Bitcoin up as collateral, and if they get wrecked on leverage, maybe they actually get liquidated. Whatever the company's potential for getting liquidated or just completely wrecked, you've got to factor that in too. So some companies might actually deserve to be traded at less than one MNAV if they're going to lose all their fucking Bitcoin. So at this point, I'm clearly a believer that strategy is going to safeguard. I don't know if I should say their Bitcoin or my Bitcoin. I guess I should say their Bitcoin because I don't have an actual claim to it. But I'm still confident that strategy is going to be a competent guardian of and cultivator of more Bitcoin. So the only thing that scares me a little bit, and I think Bitcoin Knots is the first true test of the fiat system for Bitcoin treasury companies of whether they're really on the side of Bitcoin and Bitcoiners and the nodes. I think clearly Core is not. I don't want to talk about motives. I've been DMing back and forth about some of this, and I'm not going to necessarily go out and say that Bitcoin Core is trying to actively destroy Bitcoin. It doesn't really matter what their motives are. It doesn't matter if they're infiltrated, if they're being paid, or if they're just incompetent and don't understand the second and third order unintended consequences of relaxing the filters and making it much easier to put entire files, like MP4 sized files. Let's just blow it open and roll that out. What could go wrong? So regardless of whether they're doing it on purpose or by accident, through ignorance or malice, doesn't really matter to me. They are either unwilling or unable to protect the code. And for me, the decision is the same. So I can say that they're unwilling, which would be accusing them of malice, or I can just say that they're unable, which would be either they're just poor decision makers or um, maybe reckless ego. Wasn't that movie with Dustin? No, no, sorry, not Dustin. Keanu Reeves, where he was being tempted by the devil. Wasn't that his favorite? Was it ego? Was ego his favorite sin? Anyway, um, yeah. Regardless of whether Core is unwilling or unable to protect Bitcoin, the decision for me is the same, which is to oppose their efforts as they are currently aligned and support code that is aligned with the node runners, which, in my opinion, would be the knots version. So I do need to get my shit together and upgrade because knots just had a new version come out. But yeah, I think this is going to be the Bitcoin Treasury Company's first litmus test about whether they are going to demonstrate that they're still have both feet firmly planted in fiat, or whether they're truly Bitcoin uh, Bitcoin maxis. And I'm not have to think about it. I might be creating what is it, a no true Scotsman fallacy and saying, oh, well, you're not a real Bitcoiner if you don't run knots. So that might be a little bit harsh for me, saying something like that. I'll have to think about that a little bit. Um, but I think this is going to be a pretty good test. And at some point, there will be more, right? When governments come in and says, "Hey, strategy, you got a million Bitcoin, and we got a bajillion trillion debt in debt. Hook a brother up. We need your Bitcoin." I don't know how they would sidestep some kind of confiscation or whatever, but those types of tests are in the future, and they're so obvious that maybe those are the ones that won't get tried. Paper Bitcoin, CBDCs, Tether, those seem a lot more likely. And then, kind of co opting the core developers, not all of them, I don't think are evil or stupid. There's probably some good ones, but how does it go? One bad apple spoils the bunch. And so if the good core devs can't stop the malicious core devs from implementing 30, version 30, again, those good core devs are either unwilling or unable to prevent it. So that's in a way they end up kind of being useless. But then again, some people are saying that I'm me bitching and moaning about it is kind of useless too. Um, in one thread that we have, it was said that by running knots, I'm basically just going and wading out into a stream and standing there hoping that I would divert the water flow. When in reality, it's just going to go around me. I don't think that analogy is quite apt, but people would probably say that I'm wasting my time because spam and I mean even CP is inevitable at some point. I refuse to believe that until it like really happens. We know it will happen because it happened to BSV when they implemented a change similar to what Core is about to implement, and Very quickly, um, they got CSAM on their blockchain. Now, they were already a shitcoin, so it didn't really matter that their doomed piece of shit coin got worse, but it does matter to me that I do and say everything that I possibly can to prevent Bitcoin from getting tarnished. So, yeah, if we don't prevent this from happening, like, do we even deserve Bitcoin? What, or deserve what Bitcoin could have been if we don't do whatever it takes to safeguard it? At that point, maybe we don't deserve to get off planet, and the sun can just explode in a million years, and we'll go out like a light. I'll be long gone by then, so hopefully it works out. But if it doesn't, I'll already be moon dust. All right. Well, that was a fun rant. What's up, Dana? Why why you got to do this at 5:30? This isn't even early. This is like 11:30 a.m. for me. I've already been to the periodontist. My uh my bone surgery or whatever the hell they did is healed up nicely. My gum pockets are like looking good, and I was discharged. I can go back to the regular dentist, and they don't need to fuck with me no more. So I've been there. I got stuck in traffic because there was accidents all over the hell everywhere, and drove all the way down there, drove all the way back, had steak and eggs. It's time to roll. What's up, Keith? Morning, brother. Update on the Strive 1017 put spread. I was getting fills last week as high as 240. Max loss equals $10. Max gain equals 240. I'm bewildered. Yeah. Treasury Org says UBI me in Bitcoin. Yeah, I meant to talk about that a little bit more. Like, I mean, the only way that people don't get absolutely punked is if like if they steal from everybody, extracting their wealth through inflation, stack a bunch of sats under the government, and then like distribute UBI from it somehow. I mean, I guess, but like I'm sure you're probably only going to get like 10 cents on a dollar. So it's not even a fair trade. Treasury says I would prefer treasuries I invest in be conservative and contemplative before weighing in on consensus node policy. Yeah, that's fair. And um, if I think especially since strategy likes to be transparent, I would be at least satisfied in the short term if they simply commission a study or demand that their custodians do a thorough review and comparison, and like you said, be contemplative and contemplate the decision about whether you know and maybe like, hey, you know what, we're going to custody half of our Bitcoin at a custodian that runs core and the other half that runs knots, just to, like, I don't know, hedge their bets or something, mitigate risk. They don't have all their Bitcoin at a single custodian, so they do understand that diversifying that risk would make sense. That would be kind of like a bitch ass way of sitting on the fence, and that doesn't really go along with what Saylor preaches about. There's no second best, and you can't be safely evacuated on 2 lifeboats, and you can't sit in 2 chairs. The older saying was what, you can't ride 2 horses with 1 ass, something like that. Um, so, in one sense, it would be kind of cool for them to make a decision, grow a pair of balls, and then decide. Um, Strategy. I was obviously the first to hold Bitcoin, so they demonstrated courage. And, if they were conservative, they could have just been like, all right, let's take our $500 million and we'll buy $10 million worth of Bitcoin, right? They could have done that. That would have been conservative. But they demonstrated courage. And what did somebody say? That Bitcoin is not an IQ test, it's a courage test. And so, in a sense, I agree with you, but at a minimum. So, at a bare minimum, I want to know that they have thought about it deeply, they have contemplated it, or they have paid someone else to contemplate it, sent a report, and I want to know that they've evaluated it and made a decision based on actually thinking about it and not just, well, we're too scared to make a decision outside of what everyone else is doing, right? Because if 80% of the network is running core and only 20% is running knots, well, then um, the cowardly or the easy way to make a decision would just be the one where if things do go tits up, you can just say, well, we were just doing what everybody was doing, right? Everybody was running core, so we ran core. And who could have ever saw this coming? Oh, I don't know. The um, all the people who were running knots and ballooned the adoption from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 15 to damn near 20% now at this point. Maybe those people who were trying to fucking warn you, um, you you won't necessarily get fired from your cushy executive job if you go with what 80% of the people are doing. So you can just fail. What is it? How does it go? You fail your way up the chain of command. Um, Bitcoin treasury companies are more than welcome to fail their way up by not making a courageous decision, but they should at least be thinking about it. And I want them on record. I want to know that Strategy and Metaplanet and Semler and whoever the hell else has thought about it, made their decision, tell me what their decision is, and then I can say, okay, you either align or you do not align with my philosophy. And if our goals no longer align, then I am no longer going to be a shareholder, and I can go find some other company whose mission that I believe in. So yeah, I agree that they should be contemplative, but at the same time, um, they can't just drag their feet forever because V30 is coming uh, sometime in October. So if you're going to be able to say that you have plausible deniability, that you tried to prevent some bad shit from happening, you've only got about 30 days to figure your shit out. So take your time contemplating, but hurry the fuck up about it. What's up, Dreamin'? Hope they stay out and avoid reinforcing the big stack equals influence narrative debunked in the block size war and creates expectation of their involvement in protocol drama and dev funding. The whole regression to denounce core or your pro CP is some Karen shit, in my humble opinion. Well, maybe. Um, yeah, saying that the person is pro CP might be a little bit harsh. But when we have a clear use case that when you take a certain position and you implement a certain code, like what BSV did, and it immediately results in CP, it's hard to argue that taking the exact same uh, direction with the code won't lead to the same result. All right, with that being said, let's see if we can get into some trade drama. All right, strategy's down. This is finally ready to roll. So I sold them for 916. They're worth less than half of that. So what would be 450 for like 55-ish, 458. So I'm gonna go ahead. I can only roll these out really one extra week and maybe probably have to roll them down. And somebody warned me about the desktop sounds. You can lower that a bit. So I'm just going to roll this down to the expected move. That chipped away at my margin use just a smidge. So I probably don't want to spend all of that. And I might just, I wonder if I should keep some of it as cash. Let's see. Poor man's covered calls, same deal. Let's roll to 45 days. It is Tuesday, so I can get exactly 45 days. Before I do that, I have to double check. My long calls are a combination of 250s and 300s. Oops. So the 250s are worth 130, so I should sell at least the 380s or higher, approximately. And with these, I should probably be selling the 405 or higher. So if I average the two, that's going to be around 390. So we'll see if I can roll these. Maybe I won't roll them all the way down to the expected move. Let's roll to 385. If I roll to a different strike, that'll let me keep them separate in the positions list. So I've rolled all my strikes down, which is limiting my upside even more. Let's ungroup, group. Would be a nice feature if the groupings, like when I roll a position, if the position that I rolled would automatically group. Maybe I'll make a suggestion. I was been tempted to try to dollar cost average into these 890s, which are absolutely decimated. This might go down in history as one of the worst FOMOs of all time. But I kind of kept this around just to as penance. Like I have to sit here and stare at these staggering losses, like 99% losses or something stupid that I FOMOed into shortly after the November pump, I think, or somewhere in there, somewhere between October, November, December ish. So it looks like my speculatives are already out to March. And I collected about, let's see, 20 positions times about 400 a pop. Times 10, so about 8 grand. So maybe I'll put like 4 extra positions on, but I'll stack some cash. Not really stack cash, but chip away at my margin use. March. So if I do about 4 of these, that'll not 14, 4 of them. Spend another 2 grand. Yeah, I think that works. Yesterday, I peeled off some Tesla, which is still up in recent history. And I added some more strategy position. I believe I added this poor man's covered call here at the bottom. So this is not ready to roll yet. This is just chilling. But these are ready to roll. And this is a combination of 300 shares plus the 4 PMCCs. The PMCCs were actually an absolute disaster. So I took a fairly aggressive long call position here, and these damn things are not even in the money anymore. So it's kind of hard to scrape premium out of these bad boys, but I can, let's see, 390 or higher. So yeah, I can probably just roll close to the expected move. It's my cost basis. So my cost basis even here is 400. So if I roll below it, technically I would be exposing myself to potentially selling at a loss, which doesn't really bother me, especially since I've collected so much premium. My true cost basis is probably way under 400. Let's try to get a fill. Let's get the trades done, then I'll come back and get caught up on the chats. All right, that generated 1,800 in buying power. This is the IRA, so there's no margin use even possible. So let's buy some more dip. What did I say? 1,800? So I can get 3 more of the March. All right, same deal. These are finally ready to roll. Well, not finally, they've only been on for 6 days, which means strategy's not been performing very well. unfortunately. Actually, let's check what safe trades I need to make here. So same situation. I can go as low as like 380, but I kind of don't like it. Let's do 390. That gave me 500 bucks to spend, but 508. That's not quite enough to get one of these. So I can guess I can grab a February. Basically playing the lottery with the long calls until the end of the year. And if they don't hit by then I just have to dust myself off and assume that the bull market is gone. Oh, wait, why is that for a debit? Oh, that is supposed to be a debit, so I'm going the wrong way. Okay, there we go. All right, all the cash be spent. Only got about 11 days left on these bad boys, and then it'll be time to roll those for a loss. That's going to be nice and painful. Guess I'll be tax loss harvesting with those. All right. The challenge account, that's not a challenge account anymore. These are actually ready to roll. They've already captured. Well, maybe not. Let's see. What's the expected move for this Friday? Yeah, I could roll them to 340 for a tiny credit. Yeah. I'm not going to really adjust these that frickin' often. So I could just close one, and then maybe if we get a little bit of rally, put it back on. Eh. But these are ready to roll. So let's do that. Damn it, I gotta check again. So these are 200s. I can sell the, wow, I can actually sell like the 340s if I wanted. And here, 350s. So I can roll these to basically wherever I want. So I'll roll to 375. Nice whole number. Or like, you know, it's a multiple of 5. Nice and tidy. All right, looks like I've been stashing a little bit of cash here. Wow, so I'm barely holding on to some positive theta, but I won't be as soon as I buy these long calls. Could roll them. I could roll a couple down for some more theta. We'll see. 4 of the Februaries. Computer's a little slow today. All right, I think that is good to go. Let's check the 5K count. Can't be much of anything to do here. A couple of puts expiring Friday, nothing to do. Let's see, is this one ready? This one's pretty close to ready, so I might as well just roll this one. But let's look and see what long call I have to make sure that I roll this to a relatively safe strike. So it's a 55 call. It's worth 15 bucks. So I need to roll at least to the 70 strike. So basically, I'm just going to roll it out to the same strike. Let's roll. 45 DTE. Go to 70. Low fill likelihood. So let's do 0.7, 0.69, 7. Really? Okay. The 400 call. Is this ready to roll? This is ready to roll. So 45 DTE. Damn it, again. What was my long call that I'm selling this against? Basically, my collateral is the 300 strike, and it's worth 73. So as long as I sell 375-ish or higher, I should be good. So let's drop this to 385. No fill. Let's try again. Let's do 325. It said high fill likelihood. It usually insta fills. There we go. Yeah, everything else looks good. Let's see how much buying power I ended up with. 3,000, but 2,700 is already used up in collateral. So that's like another 394 bucks. Not really much buying power that I can actually do anything with. I guess I could like dollar cost average into these damn debit spreads again. But I think we'll check chats and call it a day. See, Dreamin says a lot of relative strength today for strategy in Bitcoin or versus Bitcoin. With MSTR sentiment in the shitter and retarded FUD rampant, I'm starting to think we may see some MNAV bottoming. Tempted to ease off the covered calls a bit. Yeah, I'm feeling that same kind of like eerie feeling that sometime in September, October, we will see the reversal or we'll get the last Bitcoin gasp or something. What's Bitcoin actually doing? Okay, so Bitcoin's just hanging around. The only thing that scares me a little bit, well, I guess Strategy's chart looks a lot different than Bitcoin's recently. So we've got a lot of similarities right up until when? November-ish? Or even through here, through March, April. Very similar. And then Bitcoin has kind of been up and to the right, grinding a little bit. So we were 107 in May, and we're at 110. So basically sideways, but maybe, we've got slightly higher highs and higher lows for the most part. But in that same time frame, strategy has kind of been drifting down lately. And so yeah, I've got two competing worries. One is what you said, where, okay, we might get this reversal, and I don't want to miss out by having too many covered calls on. And then the other one that's kind of like, this doesn't really look like capitulation. Like, why would we reverse off this? Now, if Bitcoin goes nuclear, obviously strategy should go with it. That's my assumption. But absent a Bitcoin rally, like, what could strategy do on its own? If Bitcoin is just sitting at 110 in another month or two, what would strategy's price look like? And, you know, bottoming out here, like a double bottom. I guess this is a triple bottom. I don't know. But you're setting up all these points of support here. And, clearly the market sent a signal that said 237 is too cheap, because then we went up to 400 again. But like this gentle downward slope here, I don't know if that's going to be enough for the market to be like, "Oh yeah, let's pump from here." um I don't know if there's some TA to support or refute anything, any of this shit, because I don't really do TA, but just looking at the chart and imagining the psychology of the market, this doesn't seem like a springboard that you could bounce off of. So, would I be surprised to see like a flash down to 300 or below? Like a nice 275? No. But if that happens, that would yeah, that would definitely motivate me to convert maybe some of my shares over to long calls, and really just kind of go all in. Not literally go all in, but figuratively, like, add a bunch of leverage. Doesn't mean it'll work out, but yeah, I'm kind of, yeah, so in that sense, I almost kind of feel like my covered calls are kind of safe, because we haven't seen that market, like, real just blood in the streets, pain and suffering, like what we had back in March and April. So yeah, there's an argument raging in my head about both of those outcomes. Let's see, and I'm not even going heavy on the covered calls, only doing covered calls against 60% of my stack with the 10 Delta Hermes Lux Strat, funneling most premium into Strike, which seems criminally underpriced. Yeah, Dan's been banging the drums on STRK lately as well. I think he's been rotating some cash into it. I don't know, cash, or he's been rotating some kind of positions. I don't know what he's been rotating from into that, or maybe he's been. Wonder if he's been selling covered calls and buying strike. Huh. Let's see. R the cat. Haven't you considered having uncovered shares as the way of having long exposure instead of lottery long calls? At least they don't decay. Yeah, and it really, yeah, it's definitely um, one way to do it. And I was just wrong that we would get. We had two pumps in 2024, so I put a bunch of money on the table, hoping that it would happen at some point in 2025, and we really didn't. The only thing that we can say is that we basically got back close to all-time highs. We had all-time highs in November, and then we like kind of got there again in July, but never went to, seven, eight, 1,000. So I guess I'm just swinging every time I get up to the plate, and I'm willing to keep swinging the rest of this year. But yeah, I think it would be, it might already be foolish, but I think it would be even foolisher to continue to do that forever. Like if it doesn't happen by December or January, then I'm just going to call the bull market over. Maybe the bull run gets extended to March or April and I miss out. But yeah, I'm willing to continue on with this strategy for another 3 to 5 months. And then at that point, I would probably just start covering 100% of my positions and not even leave any long calls exposed. Because if my presumption is that the bear market is coming, I'm not even going to worry about unlimited upside that much. And if I'm wrong, it's just fine. Maybe I get some shares called away at a profit, and that would be okay too. Appreciate you chiming in, RR. All right, that's all the trades for the day, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. Be good, y'all.